Peace, 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 peace. Welcome everyone to another segment of Thunderground Thursday on Enlightenment and Transformation. As many of you know by now, it's been a good while now. Many of you know I am Chief Yuya, and usually refer to myself just as Yuya. But I want to thank you all for tuning in on this Thursday. And I want to thank all of you who are tuning in later, whether it's much later or if it's just tomorrow. I know we all have our different schedules that we work with. And, I'm glad that you found a way to make this experience a part of your schedule. All right. I wanted to deal with something tonight. As you know, over like the past month, really, I've really been I've really been focusing on different topics and situations and issues that surround us launching into this better space and better person that we keep promising ourselves and those around us that we truly, really are. And sometimes it's difficult to look at our true situations and our real situations and see where the blockages and the obstacles are. So the past month with our Thunderground Thursdays, Foundational Fridays, and even our Chief Speaks on Sundays, I've been really focusing on dealing with just those different things like devotion and loyalty and, regenerative ideas and sentimentalism and all these different ideas sometimes that we inherit or we adopt from a culture without question, and find later that our perception or our approach to those ideas is not working for us, but we don't know which one is actually the problem, because obviously it's like a soup. It's a soup of culture that we've been given, and often too many ingredients, as you know, in any soup will ruin it. So you have to have just the right ingredients, and not enough ingredients. Well, that may not ruin it. I mean, you have tea, maybe, but, so really looking at the ingredients that create certain obstacles in our lives that are difficult to move beyond. And obviously I'm doing this also because we're coming to the end of the financial year of 2015 very soon. We're pretty much at the halfway mark through December, the supposed 10th month. And, I just really wanted to address a couple of issues, again, going back to that some of us may be dealing, not all of us maybe, but even if you're not dealing with it, you certainly can use the information to assist someone else, right? We all could use a little bit of help. So, one of the things you see here, all the bleeps going off, but one of the things, as many of you know, in my ministerial work that I really try to focus on with folks is those first steps, the first steps of launching out of the muck and mire, and the first steps of launching into who we are. And that has been a theme for some time now, especially with all of the Foundational Friday shows and Thunderground Thursday shows, Mastermind Monday shows, the Anua Safo shows, Chief Speak shows, for the most part really dealing with how do we get started. And Thunderground Thursday is the urging to, So even coming down, like I had mentioned this Sunday on the show, that I would be making some changes to the format of Enlightenment and Transformation going forward in 2016 Roman year, because it's just time to switch things up. I promised myself a certain amount of time that I would be doing the shows a certain type of way, and I have fulfilled that promise and that covenant. So now I have a little bit more liberty to do the things or do things differently than how they currently are being done now. So I'm looking forward to that, and I guarantee you it's going to be a very interesting and engaging experience going forward, even more so than now, even more so than now, for those of you who do enjoy it. All right. So there's two things I wanted to really deal with this evening and address in terms of our spiritual activism or our work of going forward. One of which was the idea of stamina, and the other is the idea, I guess we could say it's closer to patience, but it's more so, I wanted to address how we deal with certain types of people. And I'm going to explain what that means and what that looks like after we deal with this idea of stamina first, right? And the idea of stamina is something I think about often because of the work I do and the amount of work that I do, and the people who, some of my predecessors who've been doing it longer than I, and some who come in and then leave. It always brings questions of stamina and endurance to the table when you're doing community work, because it can be very trying. Believe it or not, it's not always just doing blog talk radio shows and joking around and playing and things like that. That joking and that playing is the release and the stress reliever from the full weight of what it really is, And sometimes you don't want to make things look or appear as difficult as they truly are, because you want to continue to encourage people to join in, But the truth is, it requires a great deal of stamina just to even repair some of the situations in your life when you're inundated by a cultural program that has been set up and designed to pretty much box you in, to even determine what your multiple choice decisions and movements will be. I've always said that to you. A lot of times when we think we have left the matrix, we don't realize that leaving the matrix was a choice that was put in front of us by the designers of the matrix. The fact that we call it a matrix, the fact that we have even a concept or an idea that we could be batteries or mindless drones for an overarching, more powerful civilization or more powerful society is again something that was given. So, but just the idea, we know that we're surrounded by a lot of different thoughts, ideas, programs, and schemes that were not necessarily of our own original design. So based on that, sometimes we have to cut through them, and cutting through them, the first cut is easy. The wake up, open your eyes. And then at that moment, you become set apart in a way. That's that twinkling of an eye, being caught up, the New World Order. But then it takes great stamina to continue forward. It takes great stamina to continue forward with the truth and to keep fighting and battling if that's your thing. And the idea of stamina comes up to me because I often think about the heart. And interesting enough, Sister Kim this Wednesday did a show on the Okan, or the heart, right? But I often think about the heart and the the stamina that the heart has. I remember as a youth always wondering why my other muscles in my body couldn't be like my heart. I remember wishing that my arms were like my heart, because the heart had the potential and the ability just to keep going and going and going. It's a muscle that's constantly working. And your arms, you can hold something in your arms and within 5 minutes you're ready to put your arms down. Your arms are tired. And I said, man, I used to always say, what if my arms were like my heart and I could just hold something for like 10 years? Or if I could just push and pull on something for a very long time. As even now, I've always been very interested in strength and how strength works, and how certain people are stronger than others, and certain structures are made to be strong and to withstand and to last. That has always interested me. Sometimes even things that were made years ago, the quality of things and the workmanship always interests me. How people had the idea years ago that whatever they were building for it to last. It had to be strong, much like the heart has to be strong because it has to pump for decades upon decades. I mean, sometimes over a century, it has to pump, and it has its peak moments and it has its low moments, but it keeps going. Very amazing instrument of the body. But How does stamina relate to our spiritual activism? Well, it's really the key ingredient, right? Because the key ingredient of stamina dictates that with that level of resilience that we're able to input into our work for the long haul, seeing that long picture and that long haul means that we can now work at peak performance for a longer period of time. A lot of times when you look at community work, what separates those who are really out here doing the work, really out here teaching and actually building something is stamina. You know, sometimes it takes 5-10 years before people even know what you're doing, before people even begin to contribute. You know, so can you get over that hump, you know, where you have to keep inputting and going through so many challenges and so many different pains and watching so many things play out in a way that you didn't invest in and didn't accept, you know, as being the actual outcome, you know, and just experiencing loss and so many different things. And sometimes it's not enough for people just to say, it'll be all right. It'll be okay. You know, I was in the car tonight giving somebody a lift, and there was 2 people in the car, and one of them was going through something. And the person in the back seat said, it'll be all right. I looked back and I said, how do you know that? Where are you getting this from? It'll be all right. You know, how do you know that this isn't the beginning? You know, we assume that once something is expressed to us that, you know, we're either at a midpoint and it's getting ready to turn up for the better, or it's almost over. And I said, no, this could just be the beginning, and you may be getting ready to go to a time in your life where you'll be praying that you could come back to this horrible space that you're at right now. It may get that much worse. You know, so sometimes, and even when the individual said, you know, it'll be all right, I said, what are you talking about? The individual who's going through didn't say anything. So they kind of even knew, like, yeah, I don't think it's just going to be all right. And of course, they made jokes like, yeah, I'd never hire you for a motivational speech. I would hope not. I would hope you wouldn't hire me for a motivational speech. There's nothing more boring than having to motivate people. You know, inspiring, empowering is a lot of fun, but having to motivate is just draining and exhausting. You know, there's a level of realism that's needed if we want to begin to develop our emotional and mental and spiritual stamina. You know, and it doesn't always require us to focus on the positive or invest in the fairy tale of what is really going on. It may look bad to me, but I'm telling you, we're doing good. We got them on the ropes. You know, that's not always the case. In order to develop our strength for the journey, one of the things that we have to do is warm up and exercise our stamina. And warm up and exercise our endurance, which is something that we don't do a lot. If you think about, for those of you who have ever engaged in any type of physical activity, whether it be yoga or aerobics, running, fighting, dance, even, you know, there's a warm up. You typically will start with a warm up, which will usually incorporate some form of stretching and breathing. You know, and through your stretching and breathing, you're able to take a more realistic inventory of where you're at. You know, you say, okay, I stretched my arm out this far, I kicked my leg out this far, or this or that. I'm seeing my limitations now, you see, and I'm seeing how far that I can actually reach at peak when I want to, or where I may have some issues. You know, okay, I turned this way, that didn't feel too good. Ooh, don't do that again. You know, so now I know where to lean at and where not to lean at as I'm getting ready to do what I'm going to do. Well, your spiritual and emotional stamina works the exact same way. You got to warm it up. And if you don't warm it up on a daily basis, then you won't really be able to operate at peak performance on a daily basis. You see, now, how do we warm it up? You know, how do we get things moving and get things started? Well, one of the things that we do, for many, they like to do things like sun salutations, for instance. They wake up and they do a certain salutation and a stretch, and they may do yoga positioning and positive affirmations. And those affirmations begin to exercise the heart chakra, right? Because in the same instance, if we can look at the heart as a muscle, I mean, which it is, but if we can be reminded that muscle needs to be warmed up, right? So your physical manifestation is a latter shadow expression of your spiritual manifestation. So that means your heart chakra or your spiritual heart would also function like a muscle as well. Okay, that's why sometimes we feel great and immense love, and sometimes we feel a lack of love, or we feel a great and immense connection to all things at times, and sometimes we feel completely disconnected, because that connection has to be maintained. It's a constant reaching out. It's a constant locking and interlinking. You don't just do it and then wait, because then you become a proverbial couch potato. I work out once a month. So in between, it becomes very difficult to connect. So one of the ideas that we kind of want to spend some time looking at in terms of our own stamina as it pertains to our emotions and pertains to our spiritual work is really looking at the consistent and ritualized warming up of those same things. For instance, when you wake up in the morning, do you express love? When you wake up in the morning, do you spiritize your arrival to the next day, to the new day? Or do you just wait until it's time to do something deep and spiritual and expect your system to work at full capacity? And you just think about the craziness of that for a second. Now, there's some athletes who train like that. They train those twitch muscles. They can move really quickly doing certain things. But even those athletes have warm-ups. Sometimes we need to, from an adrenaline perspective, we need to go from 0 to 100, in 3 seconds based on the things that are going on around us. But that's not necessarily healthy for our systems. So even consider that when you're doing spiritual work. Am I ritualizing my entire life journey from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, and maybe even when I'm sleeping, so that I'm always in the groove and building that muscle, which of course builds stamina, because the more you do it, the more stamina you're going to have. It's just like if I say, hey, let's go for a 10-mile walk every day. And you find that, oh my goodness, I'm beat and worn out. After this walk, well, if you're consistent with the walks, and let's say if I say let's do it every day, every other day, let's say every other day, give you a rest period in between, after a month or two, it won't be so difficult. You'll be flying. Next thing you know, you'll be like, wow, man, I finished it really quick. I'm walking really fast, because you've built up your stamina and your endurance, because you've constantly done it. Okay, you've constantly done it. So the same goes for your emotional stamina, your mental stamina, your spiritual stamina. It takes consistent investment. But again, the warming up aspect becomes extremely important. Extremely important. The warming up aspect, because it is through that warming up that we're able to stretch out what our self-love is, or stretch out what our spiritual knowings are. We have to stretch it. Okay. And then once we stretch it, it becomes loose. It becomes easy to give. Like anything else, when something is tight, it's hard to release it. This is why you look at some of the greatest athletes. You look at basketball players, for instance. What makes a really awesome athlete is really flexibility. Flexibility is the key to athleticism. It's not a whole lot of muscles, depending on the sport that you're involved in. But for the most part, it's usually not who's the biggest and who has the biggest muscles, because sometimes that means your body's tighter and you can't release things as quickly as you would like to release them. It's the flexibility, and through your warming up. And your warming up, again, like I said, can be your sun salutations. It can be addressing who I am in this moment, who I am in this day. who I am going forward. That's a form of warming up. That's a form of stretching. If you look at yourself and say that I'm a magnificent being made by a divine and supreme architect with, perfect intelligence, that's a pretty big statement. That's a pretty far stretching statement, right? But if you were able to say something like that and say it daily, that would be like a stretch. And then when you would come back to your own equilibrium, you'd be loose. So if an experience came that now invited you actually being that great grand thing that you just said, it would be easier for you to reach to it because you warmed up to that direction already. You see, you warmed up there. So that warming up is important in terms of developing the stamina and also centering yourself. Just like every day you should have a warm up, every day you should have a centering. Now, for some, they just like to sit and drink tea and look out the window before they begin their day, or midday, maybe at their lunchtime. But they have that moment where there's a sort of quiet meditation where they can center right back to where they are, you see, and practicing certain things on a daily basis. Like we're always talked about gratitude and how important gratitude is. And we usually taught it from the perspective of, well, when you're grateful to the universe gives you more things. That is true. That is absolutely true. But there's another thing that comes from gratitude. The other thing that comes from gratitude and appreciating all of the awe and all of the amazing things that go on in the world is stamina. Stamina comes from that. When you're in a space of gratitude and someone hits you with some really bad news or tells you what you're really going to have to go through and this and that, it's very difficult for you to go there with them because you're in that space of gratitude, you see. And being grateful for things may be difficult when you're going through, but I'm going to show you how you plant a seed to receive it. You give of yourself. The greatest way to feel gratitude of all things around you and of the created world around you is to plant a seed of gratitude, to give. Become that same force that I'm telling you to be grateful to. You see, just like if you want to understand the creator, go create something. You want to understand appreciation, do something that someone can be appreciative for. You see, if you want to hear nice things said to you, you don't always want to be the one in the mirror doing the positive affirmations. Congratulate someone else. Say something that is uplifting to them. Make sincere connections with individuals. These are the things that create deeper and further stamina in the work that you do. It creates a deeper bond between you and everything around you that comprises humanity, that comprises the world, where you pull and draw your strength from. Stamina is key in this, I'm telling you. Stamina is key. Without that, it's not going to work. You can't survive on complaining and whining and backstabbing. That actually depreciates your stamina pool, you see. Or holding grudges, things like that. Or confusing power with control. Ignoring the toxicities that are around you. Do you work in a toxic environment? Do you live in a toxic environment? Do you have a toxic support system? All of these things break down your stamina. And yes, I know sometimes you may think, well, it's a support system. How could it be toxic? Really think about that. I've covered this several times, but I never said it that way. Sometimes you have toxic support systems that put you into situations that really force you to compromise on your values, which again break down your stamina. They force you to tolerate things that you never would tolerate. They force you to strive towards a degree of personal control that may not even be needed. you know, because you feel so much stripped from you. You find this with a lot of elders as they begin to age. They become like control freaks. No, don't move that chair. Don't put, I want it right there. Because they're beginning to get into a space where sometimes the support system around them may not be as healthy as they would like it to be. Some people may just be waiting for them to die, you know, so they can get their house. All kind of different things. So stamina is a key component to your spiritual work, you know, or to your communal work, or to just even your emotional development. You need that stamina. And again, like I said, you address it, or you develop it through positive warm-ups every day, every single day. Stretch yourself, and stretch yourself beyond what you feel most comfortable with. You know, I'm gonna tell you an easy one you can do. Next time you're in a supermarket, any type of checkout line or anything, or you're at a gas station even, address the person who is helping you by their name. I know it sounds small, right? But you'd be surprised. Huge divinities live inside of small things. Next time you're in the store, just address someone by their name, and you'll see what will happen. You'll create a connection. I do it all the time, and people laugh every time I do it. You know, more so women, but in guys, you know, they'll pause for a second. You know, I mean, if you can read, you know, and if you can't, that's fine. You know, reading is not that big a deal. Just learn symbols. But if you can read and they're wearing a name tag, you know, just look at their name tag and say their name. Oh, thank you, Jennifer, or whatever, you know, and you'll see that by creating more sincere connections with the people around you, that it increases your stamina to do the work that you're actually doing, because it brings more meaning to the actual work when you're connecting with humanity. So the other thing I really wanted to look at this time is the stamina and the patience that's needed a lot of times when we're dealing with family members or people who, for some reason, maybe through a series of decisions, is in our lives, and those people may be of lower caliber, a lower caliber of character, but we're not, because of whatever situations and circumstances, we're unable to just expel them from our life experience. You know, in particular, sometimes you may have a person in your family who is addicted, has addictions that are warping and distorting their character or their personality, as all addictions do. You may have someone in your family who is a pathological liar, or someone in your circle who's a pathological liar that you cannot just quickly and easily expel. You'll find this a lot of times, especially in this environment here in the West, because we're so overburdened with the reality of divorces and split camp families. A lot of times, because of decisions, poor decisions usually, that you make in your youth, you find yourself eternally connected to individuals who, in any other circumstances, you wouldn't even acknowledge them walking down the street. And because of that, now you're forced to deal with certain realities in your life that you've now grown beyond. Again, one of the reasons why I wrote Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, for that same scenario, being attached to someone who was living completely divergent culture from your own, and not just completely maybe divergent and divisive to what you're trying to connect to, but a culture that may be diametrically opposed in a struggle for your mind or a struggle for your sanity. You know, and it becomes especially difficult when there are children involved, and you don't want to be the one who totally kicks in the back of another individual. You know, it could be a father, it could be a mother, it could be a brother or sister. So you want to honor that to some degree, but at the same time, you have to deal with this insanity. And especially, you know, like I said, if the person is a liar. The person is a liar. You know, so I wanted to address that, because I know that's, again, something that breaks down people's stamina a lot. You know, and I've seen this a lot. it's come up a lot in different work that I do, especially after divorces. You find that people, one mate will find out that the other mate was a chronic liar, or, you know, vice versa, whatever. But that's something that's really a reality that we have to address. Again, I spoke this Sunday about the mental sickness a lot of times that we don't address or we don't look at. And again, this deals with looking at the toxicity of your circle. So I'm going to tell you one method that I do. And I do it shamelessly. I have no issue with it at all. Everyone that I know or that I interact with, I'm very good at keeping contacts. You know, I have a database of all of my contacts backed up in several different places. So, you know, I never, for the most part, usually don't lose a number, you know, usually, unless there was some other type of, you know, craziness that happened. But one of the things that I keep with every contact is notes on the individual. So, for instance, if the person is habitually tardy, but they have a great personality, they're really cool, I make sure that every time they're late, I write it down, and I write down how it hit me. You know, I write that down as well. Like, what was I thinking in that moment while I was waiting for that individual? When they finally showed up, how did they respond? Did they take accountability? Write all of those notes, because those things can be easily forgotten. You know, let's say if you're on if you're in a band with a person, by the time the music's on and you're playing and you're performing, you'll forget that this person, you know, just maybe 30 minutes ago had you panicking, you know, because now we're doing our thing. So keeping records is an excellent thing to do to start to determine if your circle is actually toxic, because sometimes we truly do forget. We forget, you know. Also, a level of emotional maturity and realism is needed. You know, when you're speaking to certain people, you have to have enough prep. It's funny because I was just talking to someone a little while ago today. I have a neighbor who I look out for a lot. One of the ones I look out for a lot. And I walked down to their home, and I was looking in the window because I noticed the mail wasn't picked up. And it's an elderly person, so I said, let me take a look, make sure everything's cool. And right when I was looking through the window, one of his relatives pulled up from out of town. So they were like, "Oh, you scared me. You know, you over here looking through the window. We didn't know what was going on." I said, "Yeah, it's just me. You know, I saw the mail and I, you know, got a little nervous. So I just ran up to check." So it was like, "Oh no, everything's okay. They just didn't get the mail today." But one of the things that we started talking about, how as this person has gotten older, they've gotten, well, they said cranky. I said cantankerous. But, you know, we said it at the same time. I said, yeah, they gotten real cantankerous, you know. But the thing about it is that they had said that, you know, we have to pray every time before we come here. Like we lock hands and pray. You know, because it's a lot of preparation that's needed in order to deal with how this person has started to become. And there's 2 points in there that I want to address. One, again, when you're dealing with the person of lower character in your homestead or in your circle, for whatever reason, it could be an ex or whatever, you have to mentally prepare yourself in order not to lose your grip on reality, because they'll get you to that place. You know, that's one thing. The other thing, you want to put your attention to the actual relationship. Okay. You want to actually put your attention. So for this individual, I said, yeah, they've gotten real cantankerous, you know, but my focus is not necessarily on that. My focus is, you know, because I don't want to deteriorate the relationship that lies between me and this individual because of some of their actions. It just means that I have to guard myself and govern myself a little differently based on their actions. If there's a person who's still lovable, because some people are not lovable, you got to walk away. A person who's elderly and losing their freedom because their body isn't as strong anymore, and they can't do any certain things. They can't drive, like they can't even cook for themselves. You have to expect some things are going to come from that, so you understand, you come with the preparation, you remind yourself of that, and you focus on what the relationship actually is. Another thing that helps really to develop stamina when you're dealing with certain type of people is sometimes you just got to ignore them. Sometimes you got to know what to ignore. For instance, this same individual once, I remember, told me off because they thought I was going to do something. They thought I said I was going to do something that I didn't say I was going to do. And they went off and, if I had to wait for you, I would have this and that, and all over the place. And I just sat there and I said, yeah, whatever. I'm not, because, and I shared with them, I said, I'm probably the most reliable person you know, and we're not even related. So I'm here for you, and no matter how much you sit there and kick up dust and all and everything like that, I'm here for you, and I always got your back, and that's that. So I'm not really paying attention to anything you're saying. So that ability to patiently ignore sometimes really comes in handy. And a part of that vibration of ignoring is learning not to comment on everything. Some things don't need to be spoken on, especially when you're dealing with someone who may be chronically deceptive, or someone who may be pathologically disconnected from you, or disconnected from things that are decent. Sometimes it's not necessary to confront and address everything. Another valuable tool, which is usually the first one, is confrontation. But I'm going to show you the best way to confront that type of individual is to head them off at the pass before they even start. This is where, like, what did they used to say back in the day? Speak to the hand. Speak to the hand. Because when you start to allow certain patterns and certain designs and certain shapes and the expression of words and vibrations to soak into you, it starts to confuse your reality, and your perceptual tunneling of how you view this person gets distorted based on you absorbing and soaking in what it is that they're saying. So sometimes you have to know when and how to cut something short, and to say, before you even go there, let me just tell you this is what we're going to do. Just cut them short. Like I always say with children, don't let them talk too much. When they do something wrong, you say, hey, what'd you do? And you know what they did, and they start, just cut them short, punish them right then and there. Because if you let them talk too much, you're going to start believing them. And what you can do, and this is where the value of the note taking comes in, when you finally come to that point where you have to confront, and you're willing to but you're willing to allow the relationship to dissolve. This is where you can bring your notes and say, well, listen, I'm going to show you some patterns of some of the things that you've been doing, maybe over the past 5 years or past 10 years. And then maybe when I show you these patterns, you'll understand why I have to deal with you in the way that I have to deal with you going forward, that there's a purpose to it. And of course, the first response is always going to be defensiveness. Oh, you've been keeping notes on me? Oh, you did that. It doesn't matter. You ignore all of that. You go right to the core and to the point. And understand that typically if someone is like that, it's because they have a disturbance. People don't usually lie because they're rotten people. Rotten people don't really have the need to lie. People will usually lie or be chronically deceptive because there's a void inside of them. Obviously, usually it starts with insecurities. There's a pathology within them that has created a sickness where they never want to confront what life really has given to them. Okay, they never really want to confront what their response would be from the world populace. So they become emotional thieves. And what is an emotional thief? Someone who will deceive you in order to receive something from you that they never deserve to receive in the first place. And then you have those who lying becomes their habitual pattern. Lying becomes the first thing that they do. Deception. You say, hey, did you go to the store? No, I went to the gym. Now, it doesn't matter if they went to the store or the gym, but what happens is that the lie becomes a nice insulation and covering to keep people away from them, to keep people off of them. And this doesn't necessarily mean that the person has a deep personality disorder, or this is a person who was abused, or even when I say thief, I'm not speaking to someone maybe like a kleptomaniac, but ultimately what you're dealing with is someone who is experiencing self-hatred. They lack confidence, they lack self-esteem, they lack self-pride. So they create this reflection. They really fall in love with the idea of a mirror. And wow, you can have a reflection of something that is not necessarily you. Interesting. So I can reflect whatever I want to the world, you see. So even with that, right, one of the things to look at is how you first, in terms of your stamina and dealing with a person like this, is how you want to deal with yourself. Okay, what are you worthy of? Are you worthy and deserving of the truth, or you don't even deserve the truth? You have to kind of ask yourself those questions and make those determinations. One of the other things that, again, when we go to stamina and you have to deal with a person like this, sometimes it's best to ignore them overall until a morsel of truth comes through. Let them know that they're a non-issue in your life, as long as they're going to function in that way. It's kind of like a person who doesn't know how to speak to people. You let them know, well, when you learn how to talk to me, give me a call. Until then, I can't interact with you like this. This I can't do. We're not doing this. So there's different ways to approach that. But usually by the time you're confronting it with that much truth, you want to have the pattern. That's why I suggest note taking. You want to be able to say, well, you've done this, that, and that. Because one thing about a self-hating deceiver or a self-hating liar is that they have a mastery over the victim personality that you could never understand. So they'll stab you with a knife and then figure out a way to make themselves a victim of your anger because you're mad because they just stabbed you with a knife. So when you have those notes, you might get caught up in that, and then you'll look and say, no, wait a minute. I have a right to be angry and I'm not falling for this because I'm reading my notes here and there's a pattern. And then you'll see how much more intelligent your response will be after that. All right, so that's just a little guidance I wanted to give you in terms, again, we're dealing with all the things to get started and to move forward into a more sensible and functional and sane reality. Stamina is one of the keys, and realizing when you're having toxic people around you who are depleting and robbing you and siphoning off your stamina for themselves. Okay. All right. So I will be back tomorrow, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, on this same channel, Enlightenment and Transformation TV. I urge you to subscribe to it. If you enjoyed tonight's segment, definitely share it. Certainly like it. Certainly comment on it. All right. This has been Chief Yuya with, again, another Thunderground Thursday on Enlightenment and Transformation. I will see you all tomorrow.